have some thoughts. Christian, once you get him started, there's no stopping him. And you're clearly very outspoken on the subject.
Yeah, I fear I might be the same, so I do apologise. But if you want me to shut up, just...
I love tangents. I love getting into it. I think it's really explore the nuance and go wherever this takes us. So I keep it fairly nuance, open.
Yeah.
So with that'll be the introduction. Welcome to Beyond the Binary Thinking. We are very lucky to be joined by Mr. Curtis Daly, who I have been recommended by the YouTube algorithm for his channel Turn Left. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. youtube.com/turn left.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We've also got Christian as the wonderful voice in our head. So yeah, let's get into it. I think there's an upcoming local election because of the word I don't want to mention. It's going to be a big one. However, it's not looking good for Labour, which is probably not a surprise to anyone after the last results. Everyone will have a different theory on that, but let's start with yours. Go.
Yeah, I suppose the main question is then twofold. One is, why does the Labour Party not succeed? And the other question is, why does the Tory Party succeed as well as it does? Because pretty much the problem you have from a Labour point of view right now is that the Tories fuck up as much as they did. Like, they basically didn't do well at all with the pandemic. Like 100,000 people upwards died, way more than in any other Western European country. The economy tanked way more than any other country. I guess the vaccine rollout now worked out kind of well, but there's still going to be a major recession. And then Brexit on top of that is basically going to be an economic massive recession this year. And it didn't hurt the Tories whatsoever. They're still like solid 40% upwards. If we had an election today, they would still win it in like one of the strongest performances they ever had. Like, they're just constantly 40-something%, which is quite unprecedented historically. They're usually like hovering 30-something%. And I find it really difficult to explain why that is. Like, how do you convince somebody now, after all the stuff that went down last year, to like, and still convinced to vote Tory, to not vote Tory anymore? I don't feel like there's any good argument for it. It's really, really strange. And I guess then statistically, how you explain it is that essentially the entire old person vote, like all the people over 50 and 60, have, I feel like, become radicalized towards the conservatives, where they, like it used to be in the early 2000s, where there was basically a split vote between Labour and conservatives among retired people. Nowadays, it's like 70% Tory, like massive dominance. Whereas for young people, it's basically massive, like Labour dominance. Or I guess let's see how that continues with Keir Starmer. But yeah, especially among old people, Tories are dominating. And I think it's really difficult to explain why that is and how to reverse it. And
can I try a really simple explanation?
Old people are stupid?
Scotland. So I think the Labour Party will spend so much time second guessing itself. But if you look at the numbers, Labour only used to win because of Scotland. And once Scotland split and most people started voting for SNP, that was the death. England is very conservative. Losing Scotland was massive. Now I only give a simple answer because it's much easier then for Curtis to interrupt me and tell me why. It's much more complex and nuanced.
I mean, I don't want to shit on your parade, but it's
please do with that wonderful metaphor.
Even with Jeremy Corbyn's 32% in 2019, it was 33% just in England. Now that was more than Tony Blair's last election. So actually, it's not just Scotland. Now, to explain what's been happening in terms of the Tories, they're not going to fall below 40%. We can talk about class, we can talk about economics, but really the driving force, unfortunately, is culture wars. So the reason why young people flock towards the Labour Party is because the young people, us including the millennials and also Gen Z, is we're more progressive in our social issues. And older people are obviously more conservative in their social issues. So I think that the cultural divide is what's happening here in terms of the political parties. And the 40% vote is obviously a lot of it from Brexit. There's people, they don't need to be necessarily hard Brexit, but you know what? When we get into it, it is quite difficult to explain. But I do think that culture wars is the thing that is dominating it. And the only way to fight back against it is to talk about class. Now, if we were to compare ourselves to the US with Bernie Sanders, no, he didn't win either primary. You know, he's not president. But if you think about in 2016, he went against Hillary Clinton, who one of the most famous politicians in the world. And Bernie Sanders, his first speech was what, with 5 people listening? And within 6 months, he gained 45% in the polls and was basically neck and neck. It's because he talked about
he shifted the conversation on healthcare to madness to now the default position, even though it won't happen.
But it was mostly on class issues. And the reason why, in my head, I've always been like, when Corbyn was leader, was fight the Bernie Sanders style campaign, which is basically talk about class. You got 2017, the official slogan was for the many, not the few. There was a context behind the policies. They did very well. Did really badly in 2019 because the conversation shifted towards Brexit. And Brexit, even though it is an economic issue, the official debate behind Brexit was a culture war one. When it comes to culture wars, right-wing parties and the Conservatives will always win. So they captured the culture war demographic, shall I say, even though that falls between so many different lines, which is why they always get 40%. The Conservatives aren't winning the debate on the economy. That's long gone. David Cameron's strong economics and economic competence, that's long gone. Yeah. Now we're spending that RAs.
Don't really care. I guess this is what we have seen the last year, where Rishi Sunak basically picks up a couple of Labour policies in terms of what to do for the economy. And like, they don't care. They just want to stay in power. If they have to spend a bit more, it's just not one of their issues. But yeah, I think a better question, instead of why is Labour doing so poorly, is really why do the Tories do so incredibly well, even before
That's
Brexit?
The more important question.
I think. And it's like, it's really weird. I have like one theory that I find like the most interesting so far. There's a book in the US, it's called Bowling Alone. I'm not sure if you guys have read or heard about it. It's basically a really famous study on how the US social fabric more or less collapsed since the 70s and 80s. And a really famous statistic from there is that the amount of friends people have dropped from something like 5 to 1 or 2 today. So close friends you can actually talk to every day. People basically became more lonely. But the book is about much more than that. It's a massive tome of different statistics about how society became more isolated, which goes from union membership collapsed, party membership collapsed, newspaper readership collapsed, people writing to newspapers collapsed. Literally every statistic you look at, society became much less collective and significantly more isolated. And I think this is one of the major problems in terms of why people vote the way they do. Where nowadays, especially if you have old people, they probably don't really talk too much to younger people anymore. They don't join groups outside of that. The only really way they get the information about how politics runs is from some kind of newspaper or some kind of internet website that is probably run by some kind of billionaire. And then we end up basically with Chomsky's manufacturing consent, where you have this sort of culture war narrative, where the only thing that really matters is this whole nation of like national sovereignty, we are the strong people, all this nonsense about identity that really doesn't affect anybody's life in any meaningful way. And then any kind of economics discussion is just like booted down the ladder quite significantly. And I think that's a massive part on why the Tories do so well. That, I mean, you see it in 2019, where I think the Labour Party, especially Jeremy Corbyn, just was destroyed by essentially every major newspaper. So even The Guardian was really critical of him. And then if you go further to the right, like the Daily Mail was just open contempt of him and just...
I found a very interesting backdrop to this is how the Tories have played the BBC. They have threatened multiple times over the last 6 years to withdraw the license fee. They've always had it during more than 6 years then, because it was since this first talks of austerity, right? As soon as the BBC were being critical of them, it was like, well, that's going to have to be the first thing that goes. And it's just very dangerous if your boss who pays you keeps saying like, well, I don't like that opinion, so just so you know, you're going to get a pay drop this quarter and a pay drop next quarter, and we're considering defunding you entirely, and then to expect that organisation to do independent journalism and not have a horse in the race. I think more recently the BBC has replaced its director with a former member of the Conservative Party, and I remember
that's going on for like a decade, where like the head of the BBC becomes like the communication manager for like the latest Tory MP or something like that.
The thing is, I don't think that has much to do with it though. I understand what you're saying about David Cameron was the first person to say it. Like, if you don't be good, we will cut your funding. So yes, it's a threat, but I don't think that has much to do with it. I think it's much wider than that. The BBC isn't an establishment institution, and it might not care who was in government, but it does care what type of government. So remember back in, not even the 90s, back in the early noughties, and it was heavily in favour of Blair and war. It was a Labour government. They don't care who's in government, as long as it fits between those two lines of where the acceptable opinion is. So it might have a little bit of effect, but I think it's a lot wider than just simply, the Conservatives have threatened to cut them. This is why they're standing in line. Yeah. No, it's full of establishment types.
Went to the same university as those and school as those in power.
It's a revolving door between government and BBC. Yeah. We know that. So it's a lot more deep than that, which makes it a lot more worrying, I think. Yeah, it has. Yeah.
I mean, I guess the positive side is that all of these newspapers are basically falling apart, and I think they all lost like viewership in like hundreds of thousands over the last 50 years. So because nobody reads those things anymore, and it's just
Facebook,
like really the retired people reading them.
Oh god, Facebook's been taken over by the boomers.
Yeah, true.
Oh, give me strength on that one. But I'm not even worried about right-wing media. I'm not worried about the Sun, the Daily Mail. I'm not been worried about them for a long time. I remember when, a lot of us on the left said Corbyn's been smeared so much, and then James O'Brien came out and said, "Oh, you think Corbyn's been smeared?" When the Daily Mail said that Ed Miliband stuck a knife in the back of stuck a knife into the back of the coach. I don't know what it was. His point was trying to make is that the right-wing media made so much smears against Ed Miliband that Jeremy Corbyn's had a free ride. I said, the problem isn't the right-wing media, it's the so-called central impartial media. The right-wing media can say whatever they want. Less and less people are listening to them. What I'm worried about is the so-called establishment centrist media, or the BBC. So if you compare some of the attacks to Ed Miliband from right media and compare it to Jeremy Corbyn, some of them were worse against Ed Miliband. But if you compare the BBC to Jeremy Corbyn, the left and socialists, they were worse. And that's what worries me more. I don't care about tabloid media. It's dying. It's losing. Fuck them. But the BBC still has a lot of influence. And that is where I worry about media bias, because people take them seriously. Because people know the tabloids, it's a loud voice, they're shouting their opinions down. But when the BBC are biased, that scares me way more.
I remember a couple of years ago where Corbyn proposed that in the BBC, they need to have basically diversity higher, that they need to have working class people actually in there, people that don't come from Oxford or Cambridge, that they need to have like a certain representation of all parts of society and not just be some rich people. And I guess that didn't go down well on the BBC.
I don't think a lot of things go down well with Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, I agree. It's basically that. I mean, Chomsky talked about this like 60 years ago. God, Chomsky's really old.
Really wise.
But it's that. But that all the people that get promoted in these sort of institutions are the ones that are like either Lib Dem or conservative, or at least right-wing Keir Starmer type Labour people. And anybody that's further to the left of that, it's having a really, really hard time in there in lots of different ways.
Dive down on that then. Is Keir Starmer really right wing? And if so, by what definition?
Yes, 100%.
I mean, within the Labour, he's definitely like the right wing of the Labour Party. And I guess the best way to describe Keir Starmer is a human rights lawyer that makes it more difficult to persecute human rights abuses, which is bizarre and just I feel unacceptable. But yeah, he was to the right of the conservatives in terms of increasing taxes for the corporations. That's pretty solidly right wing. Oh yeah, and he has like his patriotism, law and order, all this sort of thing.
I think he fits snugly into the Conservative Party, and that's not being facetious. I genuinely believe that. I know a lot of lefties might say that someone who's not necessarily left purist like us might say, "Oh, you're a bloody Tory." And I know a lot of the times we are joking.
I would say more like Lib Dem would feel better. But
I know we joke about someone who wasn't left, oh, he's a bloody Tory. But I actually do think Keir Starmer would snugly fit in the Conservative Party, and that is genuinely a serious analysis on my part. I do think he's quite right wing, and that there was I can't remember the name, but who was it? Someone had autism and hacked into the US security system.
Yes, and they were trying to extradite him. It's
they tried to extradite
him 15 years ago now. Wow.
And was it Theresa May was the one that wanted him to stay in this country, and Keir Starmer was hell bent of extraditing him to the US. But even when it didn't go through, he set up a meeting with the US government to apologise and say, "Don't worry, we're still on your side."
In my opinion, that's worse than Jeremy Corbyn meeting with Sinn Féin.
Right. So that's the thing. If you've got Conservative members and former Conservative prime ministers who are to the left of you, then if I were to say that Keir Starmer's a Tory, but that's not me joking around. I do think he was snugly fit.
Okay, but that's his career before, right? What about his politics? What of his policies is right of right? Because I would put him centre of centre, right?
No, I think the actual question is that, who knows what Keir Starmer's...
that's the point.
Who knows what Keir Starmer's actual policies are?
I'm not Jeremy Corbyn, right? That's his main platform.
He tries to get all the old people...
But you mentioned before about the taxation issue of the corporation tax, right? So if we would say, okay, let's forget about everything before he was Labour leader, but let's think about when he was Labour leader, and Rishi Sunak, he's not a social justice warrior, but he was talking about increasing taxes, and the Labour Party was, let's not do it now. So that's a good example of when economically they've been
compassionate
right
Conservatives are voting for universal basic income.
For basic services.
And Labour shifted right of them. Okay.
But I feel like, who knows what Keir Starmer's actual policies are, but I think what he very obviously tries to do right now is to get all the old people back that they lost in Northern England, the Red Wall states. And I can kind of see his strategy is basically, let's be Tony Blair. And let's go all out on that, and let's hope it works. Because Tony Blair got more old people than the Tory party. If this can be replicated, then Labour would win very easily. The problem is that...
the North hates Tony Blair, though. I think I reject that dichotomy. The North hates...
I guess who you talk about the North, we're talking about old people in the North right now. The main reason why Labour lost the northern states is because all the young people there had to leave because there are no jobs in these areas. And now a larger and larger group left in these areas. It's just old people that just keep there because they have houses there and are retired. Whereas all the young people move to the cities, so the cities become more and more Labour, and anything else becomes more and more Tory. And this actually, when you look at the statistics of 2017 and 2019 in terms of how people voted, these numbers didn't actually change all that much. They're still similar demographics voting. But then especially in Northern England, more and more young people just left and then voted from a city in a different district.
Was red already,
So then the MPs for these states became more and more Tory. And so when we talk about all these Northern English states, we basically talk about all the old people that are left there, and these are the people Keir Starmer tries to get. He very obviously is failing at it, and in the process of trying to appeal to them, he basically alienates the entire left wing of the Labour Party.
So there is talk of a potential surprise. So if you look at what happened in America, a lot of the reason so many states swung against the predictions was because you had a bunch of young people, because of the lockdown, return home, right? And so a bunch of states you'd never expect it had a dramatically younger voting age suddenly getting involved. And there is some hope that that could happen here because, again, like me, a lot of people have left London, gone back to their parents' hometown, and might have some surprise election results there. However, I think the most exciting way to do that would be to have a candidate that stood something rather than a centre of centre. And I think what's so frustrating often with politics is taking the mean, right? So if you take the average of a country, people are centrist. I haven't met actually many people who are that centrist, especially in this day and age. They'll say I have some left views and some right views, which I suppose on average puts them in the centre. And if you're doing market research and did poll survey, you'd be like, on average, the average Briton wants this. But no one wants like the lukewarm waters of the middle. Have a fucking opinion, stand for something. What are we changing? What's the plan? And I think I get frustrated with the talks about flags, because I do think there's a part of the left that is kind of anti-British and immediately said, oh, flags, that's racist and fascist. And you're like, well, sorry, but if you want to win an election, old people
you have to
like
get the old
flags.
people.
Yeah, and they like it. You know, they like, whatever. Like, given what they want, it's not necessarily Nazi Germany just to have a Union Jack outside your house. That's okay. But it sort of missed the point. Is like, we wanted a platform of that's terrible and this is why we'll do better. And we got flags.
I guess in terms of the centre of the UK, like the majority of Corbyn policies have been crazy popular. Like, oh God, there was like a list of it. Like renationalizing water, electricity, railroads. Just everybody really likes those policies. And
I'm so sorry for that, guys.
It's all right.
I'm sorry.
Is that Amazon?
It was it was Amazon knocking at the door.
Interrupts many a good Marxist conversation, does Amazon.
Bloody Amazon. They're cheap, cheerful, quick, but pay your taxes.
Today's podcast sponsored by Amazon. Thanks, Jeff. So, talking about the Conservative Party shifting hilariously left, this is what often happens, that you get these massive bailouts for corporations, but they just don't... About the amount you'd spend if you just bought the thing and owned it publicly. They get the bailout, they just continue to operate privately. They keep the profit and we pay for the loss.
What I'm starting to think is quite nice to be a billionaire. I don't know if you noticed, but I think it's actually quite nice.
I'm working on it.
So you're working on it.
I think this podcast might discourage some of the circles from inviting me to dinner with them.
We're trying to get leftist content, and actually they're going to discover us were actually plotting to become billionaires. We're actually bootlicking for Jeff Bezos.
So I've heard
this is actually an advertisement for Jeff Bezos.
I've heard a conspiracy theory that Dave Rubin was paid to shift by the Cato Institute and the Koch brothers, and apparently they offered the same deal to who's the Argentinian American fella, Pacman?
David Pacman. He's gone rightward a little bit.
No, move right. Yeah, sorry. So he's just published the. He was approached and said, "Hey, if you want to drift right over the next 2 years, we could make it very worth your while."
Yeah, I mean that's exactly how this sort of thing happens. This is all that.
Curtis, sell out. I recommend it, mate. Honestly.
No, this is what.
Okay, so I was actually here to tell you how good privatization of healthcare works. And actually, the NHS
it's about choice. It's about choice. If you want your NHS, that's brilliant. We're not trying to sell that. We just want choice for people, and choice is good.
If you care about the working class, right, they can choose their own bloody healthcare. All right. So if I'm gonna plug, whoever those big healthcare providers are, because I know them all, I'm glad you brought up Dave Rubin. I didn't think we'd be going down this route, but I feel like Dave Rubin might be coming up, and I've got a few bloody words to say about him. But I'll let you carry on. I did butt in. I'm really sorry.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, this is the kind of thing that why I feel like is a major problem in why politics got so terrible. Just like all the billionaires just dumping unfeasible amounts of money into all of this, and this basically means that. Oh, if you shift more to the right, all of a sudden more journalists talk to you. All of a sudden you get invited to like more interviews. All of a sudden there's like a big, like I think for Dave Rubin, how he started was that he did like some kind of institute and they invited all of the couple of really famous people to be interviewed by him. And from that he started his channel. And all of this was done with Koch brother money, I think. And this
exactly
is basically how he got his money from. And I guess on top of that, YouTube is kind of reactionary, sadly. But yeah, that also helps. But it's the further right you turn, the more money there is, and then the further left you go, there's just nothing.
Well, that's just about it's about power, isn't it? Like right-wing politics is pro-power, left-wing politics is anti-power. I think we should actually use that as a slogan. As I just actually
I think it's more like pro and
right-wing
against democracy. That's like a better way of putting
corporations and but I did read something about Dave Rubin that he started on the Young Turks as supposedly comedian lefty. He's never been funny, by the way. He's never been funny. And actually, I'm starting to wonder if that maybe he went to Young Turks always as a right winger.
He was a plant.
The money was with the left.
Okay,
not as a plant, but maybe he thought the money was with the left, and then
he's always been a grifter. Okay, I'm gonna have to move away from that idiot because. Who cares at this point?
But I guess a really good.
But no, here's my recommendation, Curtis: sell out, get a big audience, and then sell out.
I'm working on my right-wing audience, by the way. I'm going to be the new Sargon Akkad and pretend to be left-wing and then move to the right. But he's always been a fucking right-wing twat, anyway.
They love brown people criticizing Islam. Like trust me,
they love the black conservatives or the brown people. Like imagine Nawaz. I used to before I became fully left wing. I was sort of that new atheist type. Oh, he cannot be left wing, but regressively on the social issues. And I used to listen to Imagine Nawaz and think, oh, what a guy. And
Sam Harris was on my path to radicalization as well.
Yeah, I used to listen to like these guys talk sense. It's a bloody snowflake lefty. But now I'm fully progressive, so. But that was my chance.
Christian, can you get us back on track?
I guess
So
the really interesting question then is how could Labour win? Like, what can they possibly do to get back into power?
I have a strategy. It's quite cunning.
Is it Seamus Milne?
You wait 20 years for all the boomers to die.
That seems like the soundest one, to be honest.
That's about it, really. I think once you have the majority of people in healthcare, they'll suddenly switch their voting allegiance and be like, oh, yeah, no, we don't want to gut this system for profit. You're right. Yeah. Please,
we put up Jeremy Corbyn 20 years. We put Jeremy Corbyn up 20 years too early. But then 20 years later,
look at Bernie Sanders.
He might not be with us.
Look, these
vegetarians. Being left-wing is good for your health.
These vegetarians who can sleep well at night with their easy consciences, they live forever. Like, just have Jeremy Corbyn in 20 years. The world's not ready for it.
Why can't they just be normal people and bomb people and then feel good about it? Why do you have to have their bloody conscience and be on the right side of history?
No.
Always wondered
if you want to sell out your conscience, I always say it needs to happen the other way. So I just suggested selling out to the right. You actually have to have someone who's like, I am New Labour. I'm all about Margaret Thatcher rebranded. And then as soon as they get in power, be like, get out their books of Marx and Book of Mao and like, all along, I was on your side. The fools.
I was playing the long game.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the long game? We're bloody waiting. Wait a long time.
So I'm going to talk about my recent background, partly spurred on by a dare on this podcast. I registered with the Labour Party, and
my condolences, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I would have had more fun, to be honest, at the local Conservative club.
Things got bad then.
But listen, I'm a day walker. I could survive in either environment and get away with it. So I joined, and then I started dialogue, like phone campaigning, and I'm actually quite good at that, so I was enjoying it. And then I was attending meetings, and I was fairly impressed. I think there's a lot of well-meaning people. I had Christian was making fun of me because I had these ambitions to be the Dominic Cummings of the Labour Party. I was like, if I can apply my big data marketing brain to Labour, I can help them win. They're not as naive as people might think, actually. Even at a local level, that they've got some pretty savvy people getting involved. And then they kicked Jeremy Corbyn out. Oh. And I became what's referred to as a suppressed voter. So I'm not about to vote for the Tories in the upcoming election. Although Koch brothers call me. Name your price. But so
how many billions are you going to offer
I'm
me?
probably going to vote Labour. But I'm I'm not posting on Facebook about it as much. I haven't done the call centers, and I'm just like, hey guys, have we solved anti-Semitism yet? No, like I noticed there was this huge push.
Apparently, they did solve anti-Semitism.
Oh, they just did this report, right? Racism's over in Britain. Yeah. Applaud ourselves. Well done.
Do you know what? So I did a video about this. That the UK is not racist in big bloody bold letters. I want to get those right wingers to watch my channels on, not just us lefties, right? And I did obviously a video on the report, and I said what's really funny is that the government, the British state, doesn't think that the UK is racist, but just a year ago you were calling the Labour Party institutionally anti-Semitic, and if I'm not wrong, but the Labour Party is the main opposition, which is a major institution in the UK. So either the Labour Party is anti-Semitic and therefore the UK is institution racist, or actually all of the anti-Semitism was bullshit.
Turns out all of the racism was just Corbyn. And once the Spectator...
He's a bit of a bastard, isn't he?
Once the Spectator and a couple of weird ultra right-wing Jewish lobby groups got rid of Corbyn, all racism ended. It just ended overnight. And now...
So what do I say to my left-wing Jewish friends then? Do I tell them they're wrong? Because I've got a couple of mates who are Jewish.
Do they support Corbyn? Because that's a vote for anti-Semitism. They might be self-hating Jews.
I think they're self-hating Jewish people. Which, right. So this is the thing where the left did fail, and I blame anti-Semitism on the left, but not defend. And I'm going to be serious here for a second. We didn't defend ourselves enough. Now in the US, the left, and I think the left are a lot stronger in the US than they are in the UK. And that I saw an article about Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders is the most centrist you can get.
But they did try and take him down, right? The Bernie bro meme, the idea that he was sexist towards Elizabeth Warren, and so were
How
his
do you mean
fans.
Bernie is centrist?
Well, he got called a self-hating Jew. So he said, look, Netanyahu can do some wrong things too. Oh my God. Criticize the government. How dare he? And there was an article, I don't know if it was the New York Times or not, I wouldn't be surprised, but they said that Bernie Sanders was a self-hating Jew. Now that to me is anti-Semitic in itself, but that is the lengths that the establishment will go after people. And a lot of the left movement in the US stood up against it. This is clearly bullshit. Now it is easier when you do have a Jewish leader. Jeremy Corbyn's not Jewish,
yes.
But the left were more strong in fighting against that. That the establishment will...
Yeah, that was the equivalent of jumping the shark, right? Like when you accuse the only Jew in the race of being the anti-Semite.
Basically, yeah. But I suppose the difficult thing was that because Corbyn wasn't Jewish, so we couldn't say it. But we still could have been... We should have pushed back more against that, because I think when Corbyn's a very conciliatory man, and with the old Margaret Hodge issue, she was kicking off at him. And I don't know if you saw that read that Left Out book, but the book basically said that Corbyn wanted to sort of sweep it, and not just him, but the left around him wanted to sweep it under the carpet. Let's accept all the charges of anti-Semitism against us, and we can move on. But the goalposts were always going to move. So when Margaret Hodge was saying that Corbyn is anti-Semitic, like, I'm going to accept that. I'll let my personal take a battering in the media or sweep it under the carpet. But it wasn't about racism or anti-Semitism, I believe. I think it was about hurting the left, and that it wasn't going to be a finite thing. They're going to move the goalposts.
You saw it was a hit piece. So when he did something about it, it was chaos in the Labour cabinet as there's disagreements everywhere. If he didn't do enough about it, he's not doing enough to tackle anti-Semitism that's rife in his party. I think, the story shifted, as it often does, from Corbyn needs to do more to tackle a fringe element of anti-Semitism in his party to Corbyn is an anti-Semite. And it just hurt me because as big as the push was from, for fuck's sake, the Spectator, right, which publishes an Islamophobic article every other week. For
that progressive publication.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, this was one of the organizations leading the charge, right? And then, like, the moment Corbyn gets loses the election and is then kicked out the party, like, I just want to turn around to the Spectator and be like, so how goes the campaign against anti-Semitism in Britain? Or, it began and ended with Corbyn. Oh, okay, interesting. So are Jews sleeping better at night now? Really? Is that Is that what you're telling me? Was that the problem all along? And I don't think anyone in their heart of heart believes it. They know that they were weaponizing cancel culture and the news's readiness to jump on a bad story for fun almost. Like it was just an easy, low-hanging fruit.
Even questioning anti-Semitism and the weaponization of it was controversial. Corbyn's statement, which was, and it was factually based. Before anyone gets butthurt about what he said, he based it on facts, which was the case was the public thought that 1/3 of Labour members were anti-Semitic. The actual fact was like 0.0%. Or 0.001%.
Would you like to guess how many members of the Conservative Party have been involved in saying something off colour about people of different races?
Well, we've got the Prime Minister. We've got the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, in his book wrote anti-Semitic quotes. Yeah. And what really fucking pisses, I'm going to get a bit angry now. I do apologise, but I get really fucked off is that when the media get on their high horse about racism, right? But if you care about anti-Semitism, then you would say, hey, look, our Prime Minister literally wrote anti-Semitic tropes in a book they can still buy now off Amazon and all good bookstores. There's
no other good bookstores.
But they didn't give
Thanks, Jeff. It's sponsored by Jeff.
Jeff Bezos, please. I just want those monies. But if they cared about racism, they would call out Boris Johnson too. But it's not about
But they
racism.
were speculating on maybe Jeremy Corbyn stood on stage 8 years ago with someone that said something they shouldn't have said 10 years before. His
sister's mother, cousin, or But that gets me really, really angry because they set this standard of, we're the liberal media. We care so much about racism. And we might be quite conservative on the economy, but we got liberal values of racism. But it's like, but we have a conservative government which is ever going towards the right. We've got Boris Johnson who said some disgusting racist things, including anti-Semitism, which you can literally, find in the book he wrote. Yet we're going to spend all our time on the Labour Party, where you cannot find a single quote of anti-Semitism from Jeremy Corbyn. Now, I'm not going to say he hasn't got a blind eye to it. Many of us might have a blind eye to anti-Semitism, but this guy is not an anti-Semite.
But this leads me on to the bigger problem, right? And I think we've alluded to it already, that the Conservatives just want power for power's sake, and the left want all voices heard and inclusivity and all this, which is a lot easier to divide and conquer. Like when you have the Conservative Party who are just focused on power, look at how they played Brexit. Now, I've got a somewhat controversial opinion on Brexit, and I think Jeremy Corbyn was probably the only anti-EU candidate on the ballot. He had quite strong, with good reasons, to criticise the EU and their policy of austerity, the way they treated Greece, then spoke to consultants and had to come out as, like, no one was clear what his position was, which is the worst position to have. And it split Labour hard. The Conservatives just said, to be honest, guys, like, we think we'll win an election if we go this way. It was
what keeps us in power? Which
very clear. I wrote 2 versions of the document. I'm not sure which way I feel. Yeah. We're going to go with Brexit because Brexit will win us the election. Stick with us if you want to win. And sadly, that was a winning strategy. And I know a lot of Conservatives who voted to remain, but actually believe, fuck it, let's get the thing done because indecision is death.
But I feel like the Corbyn not being clear on his EU stance. This is just complete personal view, so I could be completely wrong, but I felt like that was overblown because unless you knew Corbyn really well, I don't know if people knew about his Eurosceptic past.
But this is the problem, though. You're describing nuance, right? But maybe he thinks this and maybe thinks that, and that's death, right? Like you need a meme, and Boris Johnson, as a joke as he is. You know what he stands for on any issue, and it's Boris Johnson winning.
So I'll ask you then, what do you think it was a mistake for the Labour Party to offer a second referendum? Should they have stuck to Brexit?
Yes, I actually do. I think strongly, and I disagree with James O'Brien's take on this, that Corbyn was unelectable.
No one should listen to James O'Brien, though, and I'm going to lie.
Yeah, fine. But yes, I very much do believe that I think very often, and this is what an opposition has to do by default, is be reactive, right? And so the Conservatives came out so strongly for Brexit that Labour are then playing defence on, okay, what's the second best position to that, right? And their party was split, so they couldn't say, nah, fuck it, like, we're not going to pull it. They had to try and be all things.
So just to be clear, you think that the second referendum was a bad policy or good policy?
Huge mistake.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, well, obviously, the last election result supports that wholly.
Well, no, but there's some centrist commentariat might say that it wasn't because of Brexit, it's because of Corbyn's shit, and also he was indecisive, which I reject, by the way.
Yeah, that is the argument I reject. So I actually think that Brexit split the electorate and the Labour Party, and Labour's position was, I don't know, let's vote again. And Conservatives' position were, let's do the bad thing because fuck it, we're here now. And at the best of those two shit decisions, the electorate went, sorry, how long have we been talking about this now?
Well, I even felt quite fatigued. And I do have opinions on Labour's Brexit policy. Retrospectively, I do think that regardless of Labour's Brexit policy, I think they would have lost this election. But I do think that if Labour's policy was to stick to the referendum, it wouldn't have been so bad. We would still have a Tory government. But an 80-seat majority, maybe it could have been not as bad if Labour stuck to the guns on Brexit. But I think the centrists the way the centrists are thinking of is that, look, we've got the Conservative Party is going to mop up that 52% of vote. They might get 40% of that 52%. The Labour Party should try and get as much percentage of that 48%. But what they don't understand is it's not as clear as that. I don't think Brexit was a left-wing, right-wing view, but there's also the factors like towns and cities.
No, and literally, definition of our podcast, it confused me that it got split on a binary line. I know loads of left-wing people that fucking hate the EU and the IMF and everything it stands
for. I know loads of people who aren't left-wing that don't like the EU. People who would happily vote UKIP, but also would happily vote a Corbyn Brexit. I know.
The big thought experiment I do is like the Scottish vote independence tomorrow. Are they stupid? Are they
racist?
No. Should they be told they're racist, fascist?
No.
Like, no.
Should the Northern Independence Party be branded as racist? No, they're socialists.
But I guess I try to say this, but all of that, like you talk about stuff that's 2 years ago, pretty much. Like, what do we do today? Because genuinely, I actually have no good idea what to do.
You can't play short term when you're losing. They're going to lose the next 3 elections. As soon as I saw the last election result, I was talking to my dad. I have very different opinions, but he has started listening to the podcast again. So hi, Dad. As soon as I saw that last election result, we both agreed that like Labour's not going to win for some time, and when that's the case, stop thinking short term. Rebuild. Like go young. You know what I mean? I've seen it with sports teams, right? Like, there's no point in playing safe and eking out a mid-tier place once you know that it's just going to be slow decay and death spiral, right? Restart, because the country gave up on Labour, so Labour needed to give up on its old ways. Unfortunately, they decided that what was wrong was that Corbyn was too radical and they needed to go centre of centre.
I mean, that might be the strategy. I mean, maybe that is the strategy for like the next 20 years, to be like the Tories but in slightly less terrible, because all the old people, they will never vote for like anybody like Corbyn. And even in the Labour Party, you need 10% of the Labour MPs to like support you in your election leadership bid. And Corbyn barely got this in 2015 when he was elected. Like, he had to beg some MPs to like even put him on the ballot. And MPs basically were like, yeah, fuck it, he's never going to win anyway. And now they know that this can actually happen. So there's never, ever going to be a really left-wing person like Corbyn even on the ballot for leadership election, bar some major change. And I feel like then what's like the option left to do? And it feels really resigned. But I feel like somebody slightly further to left of Keir Starmer that like at least tolerates the left and doesn't openly fight them is probably the best that's going to happen for at least the next 5-6 or so years. And yeah, that sounds fairly depressing, but that's then basically all we can hope for is that the UK doesn't further slide down in like this sort of thing, and then the best thing that could happen is to, I don't know, rebuild unions in the process, rebuild left-wing organizations that are basically non-existent right now. But there's not really much of a chance.
How do you rebuild unions when everyone's out of work?
I mean, even when everybody was in work, unions were fucked, which makes it even more difficult. And that's like the major thing that really changed over the last 40, 50 years, that labor unions effectively disappeared. And they used to be a major source of power for the labor movement. That not only pushed the Labour Party to the left, but also pushed the Tories to the left. And it was like a major influence on politics that just disappeared. And that's a big problem today.
Yeah, I think there's still some mining unions that have sway in the Labour Party, even though
unions
they're not doing any
are
mining,
like the major financial contributor to the Labour Party.
Although, didn't they decide not to back? So I got one of these emails like, please donate because all the unions have just stopped giving us
Yeah,
money.
I think it was because all the people suing the Labour Party.
Email from Keir just after joining the Labour Party.
We let Keir Starmer know that Jeff Bezos has got a lot of money, so if he wants to cut taxes for Amazon, he can get some cash off in. I do want to come back to what you were saying there. Sorry to cut you off. But I want to come back to what you're saying about that Labour weren't going to be in power for the next 3 elections. And I remember listening to Aaron Bastani back in 2015 when he said, when Labour lost Scotland with Ed Miliband, and he said, Labour will not win a majority ever again. And when I heard that, I completely agreed. Because even with Jeremy Corbyn winning 40% of the vote, look, we're in first past the post, right? The percentage is great, but nowhere near power. And I think that we're in a seismic political time where the Labour Party will never win governments ever again. And I might sound a bit crazy. And Thelma.
I don't think you're far off. I think the problem, especially with Scotland going independent.
We're in a seismic thing.
Any other European.
Yeah.
No, look at any other European country. Like all of Western Europe, the left-wing parties have collapsed. In Germany, the Labour Party. In Germany, you have a multi-party system, so it's not a first-past-the-post system. And the Labour Party there went from something like 40% to now at 15%.
Oh, I thought.
And like they are never going to.
If we fixed first-past-the-post, we'd solve all our problems.
So the thing in Germany is that they actually have an election later this year, and the left wing is probably going to win. But it's not going to be one party. It's, in Germany, you have
a mix of centre left, right?
It's like Keir Starmer types Labour Party. Then you have like a Green Party. Then you have a like communist-ish or like a strong left-wing party. And those three combined are really, really strong. But then and there you have very different groups. Especially the Green Party is like all the hippies that grew up to be like middle class, like their parents, with slightly more left-wing tendencies, but nowhere near. Like they would still dislike Corbyn.
Rumor has it that Keir Starmer's got passed.
But yeah, I feel like this is
tatted on his arse. That's the thing with Corbyn. He was like, because the Labour Party was following the trajectory with centre-left parties in Europe, the pacification, where the centre-left party is obviously collapsing. Corbyn, yes, briefly revive that zombie of centre-left parties. But Keir Starmer, I mean, he's a shit leader in my opinion, but he's not exactly like, he's not sinking the Labour Party. The Labour Party has been sinking for a long time. He's maybe just make it go a bit faster. But yeah, so the centre-left parties are collapsing, and I think Labour Party is going the same way. And we're in a seismic shift where when the Liberals became the Labour Party in the 1910s and 20s, we're in another seismic shift. But the problem is there doesn't seem to be a viable left-wing party to take it over. We're just seismically changing to a one-party state ruled by the Conservatives, and that's what worries me. And we know about how PR and Clive Lewis said, let's work with smaller parties. I don't think that's a good enough alternative. There really needs to be some big change here, and I don't see another left-wing party overtaking that. There's a lot of things I've thrown out there, and I don't know what you think about it. Or
but it ties into exactly my summary of the last few decades. That there's always been this idea that, and again, you guys will laugh, but it's what I've heard, the lie I grew up on, is that we just had too many left-wing governments, and then in the 70s it was chaos and everyone was pouring on breadlines, and then the Conservatives and Thatcher and Reagan came in and sorted it. And it's going to be really interesting when there's a massive economic collapse after years of us giving the Conservatives everything they asked for, right? Austerity, like them cutting us to the bone, austerity after austerity, selling off all of our public services, everything that we should have had ownership of, and then the economy collapses anyway, and I just imagine that then, which too often happens, a left-wing government's going to inherit a shit ton of debt and the shit show that follows, and will be then judged on its performance.
I mean, why have ownership when you can just be a bootlicker? That's a genuine question.
It's my favourite meme. Jeff. Problem with neoliberalism is soon enough you run out of public goods to sell to your friends from Eton. Right? And I think it's so true. For so long we've been sold the lie that, like, oh, we want other people's money. It's like, no. We want what is a public good. And I love taking the argument to extreme. Like, you just talk to someone and you're like, no, you're right. We need choice. We need choice in our healthcare. We need choice in our police force. Let's privatize the police. Let's go for RoboCop.
I'd be happy with that, by the way.
Drones.
I'd be happy with that. I'd choose to not have bloody police.
Flying around.
I choose for protests to not get beaten the shit out by police. So if actually, I would love to privatize the police. So Bristol would be like, yeah, we choose no police. When we can have the Bristol Independent Party, and
Christian, bless him, tried really hard to end on a positive note, but the darkness is creeping over me once again, as it often does on these chats.
We started off live, and now we're talking about how fucked this country is, fucked the world is, and how fucked the left is. Like, actually, I purposely did this. It was nothing to do with the sunlight.
It's an artistic choice. Christian, please lead us out of the valley of the shadow of death.
Sure. I mean, I guess that's always the depressing thing about left-wing parties, but I guess the way you could call it is you lose on increasingly better levels. Like, I think, imagine Corbyn hadn't happened, or if Bernie Sanders hadn't happened. Both the Democratic Party and I guess even the Tories would still be significantly more right-wing. So, I mean, the reason why Joe Biden implemented or even tried to implement any kind of progressive policies is because Bernie Sanders pushes him to the left. And yeah, there's like a significantly stronger part of the Democratic Party in the US that is strongly left-wing because of Bernie Sanders bringing all these people in. And same with Corbyn. Like, before Corbyn, the Labour Party, basically the left wing of the Labour Party, thought about forming its own party because there was just nothing for them. And all of a sudden they took over power. And yeah, I really hope, like, I'm not terribly optimistic, but maybe it happens again. Who knows what happens after Keir Starmer? Because right now, Keir Starmer could sell the illusion that he was
Corbyn in a suit.
Nicer looking Corbyn, effectively, which didn't turn out, and people really liked it. I know. But then the next election is, like, the Labour right basically tricked itself into power again. But they can't do this again, I think. Or at least it's going to be significantly more difficult. And yeah, maybe they get, like, at least somebody significantly more to the left of Keir Starmer. Probably not as much as Corbyn, but
so we didn't
somebody
didn't
further to the left than that.
Which I'm deeply saddened about. Zoe, he should have joined us. I met while I was joining local Labour elections, and she is just a fierce, passionate advocate for everything that local politics should be doing. And it deeply saddens me that, given the current political climate, I'm not surprised to hear a political party is playing politics, but she was advised against talking to us. Hopefully she will come on and have another chat after the election. Because, like, there are rays of hope, and like I say, I was sat through a bunch of local politics meetings, and then she was coming on as a candidate to get elected, and my God, I was just like reinvigorated. And I think it's the same for everyone. No one's looking to what's the safe policy to win the election. What does the average person in a focus group say? Have a damn opinion. Have a personality. fuck, like do something, move something. And Christian, I think you're right. As depressing as the last few years have been, like, we are watching, we are following, we are getting older. There's increasingly a number of people that don't have houses, so don't give a fuck what the policy on housing tax is. And we're not afraid to overthrow the system for something better.
But yeah, I guess then more seriously, what the Labour Party, I feel like, should be doing is to become more democratic. I think that's one of the major problems. And Corbyn tried a little bit, but he really didn't get all that far. And that's something, I guess a really good example there would be under Corbyn, there was like a lot of money available for Labour activists to actually do activism within the party. And Keir Starmer basically ended all of that. So like all the people that want to campaign within the Labour Party, they used to have much more money under Corbyn than they have under Keir Starmer. And there are lots of smaller things that, how can you deselect a Labour MP that you hate as a Labour member? Right now, you can't really do anything. Whereas the idea under Corbyn was that if you have enough people voting against MP, the MP has to run within the Labour Party first and then run against the Tory effectively. And those are the sort of thing I would really like to see more in the Labour Party, that the party becomes more democratic wherever it happens to be. Because, I mean, that's the main issue right now. That's, you can see it in Hartlepool as well, that Keir Starmer basically flew in a guy from another area that he really likes, and it's another part of the right wing who was a Remainer effectively. And that guy is like, he's not from there. He doesn't represent the community. He's like a guy that represents the party, not Hartlepool. And that's a problem. That's, Labour Party should be much more focused on local politics and try to rebuild like a genuinely democratic party from there.
Do the restart for the long term, grassroots, like.
Yeah, I know, but Keir Starmer doesn't do that.
Let's be clear. He is a caretaker to oversee this embarrassing defeat. And he'll have a good job as a consultant afterwards.
As they all do.
As they all do. Curtis, have you got anything positive to say on your way out?
Oh, positive was it? Because I was just actually going to finish with a quote from...
Go on. We love to end on a quote. Go for it.
And the quote was Zizek, who said that he sees light at the end of the tunnel, but unfortunately it's from another train coming down. And not to be too defeatist, that's my analysis of the Labour Party rather than the left. And I do think, look, justice, it's not a straight line. It is a curve, but it does bend towards justice, right?
It's true. We have had years of like strong grassroots organising, Extinction Rebellion, BLM, like.
And I do want to say to those on the left that think Corbyn or Bernie Sanders were pointless, to fuck off. Because they think, look, you know, we had Corbyn for 5 years, or we had Bernie Sanders who failed 2 primary attempts. We got nowhere. It's not just about electoral politics. Corbyn is still invigorated a lot of people.
Politics doesn't happen every 4 to 5 years, right?
Right. Exactly. And like Bernie Sanders, no, he didn't win the primary, but he managed to move the Democratic Party to the left, or at least get the conversation going. Jeremy Corbyn energized people to, and especially younger people, to get into politics. And if we talk about the Northern Independence Party, who obviously stand in election, don't think they're going to win. But I think they're here to stay, because politics is more than elections, and it's about the broader movement you can build. So I think that Corbyn and Bernie Sanders were integral to the left, despite not winning any elections. So I do think the Labour Party probably are finished. Keir Starmer, I mean, he'll have a nice job at Bupa. And if you've got any jobs going, by the way, I'll happily take it if you give a bit of money. But in terms of the Labour Party, they're probably finished. But the left, ups or downs, it will
rise again.
Will rise again. We'll see what happens next week. We might change the tune again.
I'd love it if we were so wrong. They're like, oh my God.
I'd be more satisfied if I was wrong than right, to be honest.
I made quite a lot of money. I bet on Trump to win the election early in the Republican primaries with very good odds. And I think that's my advice to people watching. Sponsored by the bookies, Ladbrokes. Yeah. Bet on the sad thing, because then either way you're happy.
Bet on right-wing parties.
Yeah. Bet on far right part BNP to win.
Well,
because then either way you're happy.
Win, you're happy. If the left win, you're happy.
If your
but
worst
if you lose, at least you made
come,
20
you
quid.
get 20 quid consolation prize.
20 quid for fascism sounds worth it to me. Christ.
Buy yourself a Union Jack flag to wave.
Oh, God. Don't start me on flags. We didn't get in that discussion about flags, but don't get me started, because I feel like I could be banned off Twitter if I say it. I was quite good on Twitter, actually.
Oh, and don't get Christian started on Winston Churchill either. That's another topic for another podcast. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me on, and I hope we do this again.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it after the election. That'll be interesting.
Okay, yeah.
Alright, take care.
Have you got any suggestions to make this place lighter?
Yeah, light bulbs. They're called, this is what's wrong with the left. You haven't discovered light bulbs? What the fuck?
Light bulbs.
Is that...
Yeah, electricity is really good.
I had my DSLR hooked up, and I was like, I feel like a bit of an arsehole because my camera quality might be quite good. And I did rush home from work, and I had a few bits. I'm alright. I rushed home, and I put this equipment on. So I don't need no lighting, but I forgot that darkness does happen. Just like the Labour Party, darkness does happen. I can stick a light on if you want. People who don't.
I actually wouldn't bother reading Marx. I mean, fuck it. That stuff the guy wrote 150 years ago, even more, like 160, 70 years ago.
Adam Smith, brilliant Marxist primer, really.
No, but if you want to actually read about the economy, read Mariana Mazzucato, read Stephen Keen. What's a really good one? Just read Chomsky, basically any Chomsky. Oh, Chomsky Understanding Power. That's
I read
really
Chomsky's. He did a collection of interviews, which is sort of a manuscript, which wasn't that insightful. I'm on the Socialist Manifesto right now.
I know, but the thing is, Marx
is too complicated. I'm trying to power through, but it's fucking complicated. And it doesn't. Do you know Ryan Knight on Twitter?
I know,
right?
that's the thing. I don't really do Twitter.
Basically, he was a Warren stan, and then he turned to Bernie. And he is a little bit of a grift, a bit cringe. But then some people are like, Ryan Knight used to love Elizabeth Warren. Has never read political theory. Now he calls himself an anti-capitalist. I'm like, in one way, yes, it's a bit cringe, but also, how the fuck are you going to try to build a leftist movement when you're shit on people who haven't read
the left love to do
when
this.
And people haven't.
The left love to do this
so embarrassing,
hard. And the right clap their hands in glee as we divide ourselves.
Love it.
By the way, I'm a big fan of Elizabeth Warren. I talked earlier, right? I don't like how the Democratic Party all club together against Bernie Sanders. Right? But I don't. I'm a big fan of most of what Elizabeth Warren said. And I also think if you look at, there's the ideal versus what we have now. And if it was the choice of Biden versus Warren, my God, we lost.
Oh, Warren all day.
Warren would have taken the corporations to fucking task. I think, honestly, the reason Bernie got so many column inches is because they were more scared of Bernie than Warren. No, the other way around.
Well, yeah, because...
No, I think they were more scared of Warren than Bernie.
Really?
You think?
Oh no, way more Bernie.
I think Warren would have actually
someone who would have softened up.
I think Bernie would have failed to get so much achieved of what he wanted. Whereas I think Warren would have broken some things, or at least made it possible for the next guy to.
I think Warren would have gone Keir Starmer.
Yeah, she would have had to take the sponsors to win.
Or she would have done like an Obama, where
Yeah, I think Warren would have done that.
I mean, that's what Obama did. After he won, he immediately went massively to the right.
I mean, there's a possibility that Bernie Sanders could have got in and done absolutely nothing, whereas Warren could have done something. I accept that could be a possibility, but I'm not sure I accept that the media were more scared of Warren.
It's the problem with the weird hypotheticals, though, right?
Yeah, I feel like they're more scared of Bernie, but actually there is a possibility that he could have got nothing done, whereas Warren could have got a bit done. But I personally think they were more scared of Bernie because he was talking outer system.
Well, that's the argument.
His policy was out of the system, was Warren was in.
Here's the argument we never had, because I don't want to get tied into it, of left versus centre is it, and I think this ties into the video you sent me, Christian, of Noam Chomsky arguing with those radical leftists who said you shouldn't vote for Biden because he's too centrist. So let Trump win,
the Chapo
right?
people. Yeah, sure.
And the argument is like, is incrementalism okay? Like, or should you hit the reset button? No, yeah, Chomsky
basically comes down
just
to
for elections. Should we creative destruction? Like reject winning this election in order to shift the Labour Party hard left?
As a lover of nuance.
Well, yeah, it would never happen.
I could come up with a nuance answer to that.
Yeah, go on. That's what you're here for.
Well, I was going to say that the thing is, though, some people might call me a fence sitter, but I actually like to see both sides, right? And you got some people who fucking stand Jimmy Dore, who I think is a piece of shit. Who, by the way, said in 2016 he'd rather Trump beat Hillary. So he's chat shit, right? But there's some people who are like, burn the system down, don't vote for incrementalism, don't ever vote Biden. But then there's some people on the other side who are kind of like too much in the pocket. And I think it matters a little. So for example, I think in the US, I personally would have voted for Biden because he was actually, as someone who wasn't left-wing, was happy to take on leftist.
And by the way,
but Keir Starmer, on the other hand, I could see myself never voting for the Labour Party under Keir Starmer. And see, there's a nuance there because I feel like Biden is actually, he would actually accept parts of the left, which he has, whereas Keir Starmer wants nothing to do to destroy the left. So I'm like, I can see myself not voting for Labour Party in the UK, but voting for Biden.
By the way, if I was a right-wing lobbyist, this was exactly the sort of divisions I'd want to fuel. Pour petrol on.
Maybe.
On the left.
You'd have to be split in the left vote first, and Keir Starmer's not left, so. Which is the argument for the Northern Independence Party. They said like, oh, well, you're splitting the left. So, well, actually, we're only left sort of vote. So I kind of get what you mean, but when Keir Starmer is so indifferent to the Tories, if you're a guy who's on minimum wage working 30 hours a week, what difference does it make if you've got a Labour government or a Tory government under Keir Starmer? And some might question there really isn't much difference. Or even look at the bigger issues like climate change. If you're not serious about climate change, if it's Labour government or Tory government, both of them don't take it seriously.
Well, this is.
Now, I'm not trying to say.
This was exactly Christian's point. Now you're wrong. It is fine to help a slightly more left candidate win because politics happens more than once every 4 to 5 years. The lesser of two evils thing, the Jimmy Dore, like, yes, it hurts. Yes, it's horrible. But my God, like. You should, like, if the only decision you're making is every 4 years, I'm sorry, but like if that's the best decision you've got in 4 years' time, then make it. I hope you have a bunch of opportunities to put pressure on your party at both a local and national and social media level between now and then. Because, like they want us to be apathetic and they want us to be divided. So like I say, if I was a right-wing analytics group aiming to divide the left as effectively as possible, then let's not bother voting unless they're my guy is exactly what I'd want every time.
But if I suppose if the Labour Party feel like they've already got your vote, or the left has nowhere to go.
Which is why I pre-headed it off by voting. Your responsibility to politics does not end every 4 years.
Right,
Keep the pressure up. Voting should be the least you do. Least.
If you, I'll do it right. If you were in Hartlepool, would you vote for Labour?
I don't fucking know. When was the last time I was in Hartlepool? Hartlepool doesn't need a bunch of southern posh cunts obviously voting on their local politics.
they would.
I'm the reason they're voting independent.
There's two choices in Hartlepool, basically.
Hey, there's class solidarity across borders. They just hate the person. But I that was a bit of a silly question. But
you were saying, Christian.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's kind of obvious that, like, of course you should vote for Labour in Hartlepool because there's like two options. You have either Labour or Tory. And I mean, I can see that if they vote for Tory, which they maybe will do, it's really hard to tell. But I mean, you have seen this with the Northern English seats, where all of a sudden the government has poured lots of money into them because they want to keep these seats in the next election. So probably if Hartlepool votes for a Tory MP now, then the government is going to give them more money. So would kind of make sense for them to vote Tory, because then the government wants to keep them and give them money, which is like obviously horrible, but yeah. But yeah, in the long term, Labour would still be better for them.
Do you have a prediction of the Hartlepool by-election? Do you have any idea what's going to go?
I don't know. I think I would say like 60-40 for the Tories, but it's really hard to tell. These kind of polls they do in these local elections are very, very unreliable because they don't do them very often, and they very often depend on local circumstances. So it's like you can't really make a good, like nobody really knows right now. It's incredibly hard to say. But yeah, I mean, in the last election, you had basically three parties there. You had Labour, Tories, and Brexit Party, UKIP, whatever it was.
But they completely collapsed.
And they were like 15,000, 10,000, and 10,000. So it basically comes down to all these Brexit voters, or the Brexit Party voters. Do they go to Labour or the Tories?
I think we know the answer to that.
Probably more the Tories.
I mean, the last one, the poll was just one poll, but 20% of the formerly Brexit Party literally went to the Tories, and only 4% went back to Labour. So I think that, like the best thing to happen to the Labour Party in a way was UKIP in 2017 election. They peeled off those votes. And yes, they did take away some Labour Party votes, but I think they took way more Tories. And that's why they haven't fallen below 40%, because they realised, oh, look, the Tories are the Brexit Party. Because the Tories are good at politics. They know they can read the moves. That's why they're nicking socialist policies and outspending
Labour. Yeah, they're taking the best of UKIP and the best of Labour.
Yeah, a bit left-wing policy and a bit more racism. They know how to fucking do it. And the Labour Party are so... It's embarrassing that I don't know what... It almost does act like Keir Starmer's trying to...
Are you saying Corbyn...
The strategy is so bad.
Are you saying Corbyn should have doubled down on the anti-Semitism? Would that have been...
I think he
come
should
out
have
as
fully admitted
fuck the EU and fuck the Jews, do you think Corbyn would have won
I think he should have... I think he should have been honest with his anti-Jew hate. I think he should have denied the Holocaust, and he would have got 700 seats out of 600. He would have won 700 seats out of 650 seats. He would have got 100% of the vote.
On that note, I think we're done.
On that note.
God bless you all.
Yeah.
Keep in touch, mate. I will edit this.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun, man. I definitely will.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining, Christian. You were very much needed.
Yeah, cheers.